They say successful men don't know how to comfort children. Jared Blake was living proof of the opposite. The cold, calculated CEO of a billion-dollar empire was now squatting awkwardly, wiping tears from the face of a little boy he didn't know, at a lavish wedding. The boy looked up and asked innocently, "Are you a prince?" Jared froze. Something in his chest clenched, and he didn't know why. Then a voice rang out behind him. Cold, sharp, familiar. "Step away from my son." Jared turned quickly. Naomi, thinner than before, her eyes guarded. He whispered, barely audible, "Naomi? This boy, is he?" She didn't answer. Eli quietly reached for her hand. Naomi looked at Jared and said only one thing. "He's your son, Jared." Music played. Glasses clinked. Everyone laughed. Everyone except Jared. He stood alone at the bar, fingering a $500,000 Patek Philippe. The minute hand ticked on, cold and precise, like his life. Jared used to believe in love, in connection. But love didn't pay dividends. Love didn't come with contracts. And when his heart shattered, he learned how to freeze it. He had loved Naomi, deeply, but everything fell apart, and he chose silence. Silence, wrapped in success. Someone called him to the dance floor. He declined. His smile was for closing deals. Not for people, not anymore. Jared sipped his drink, let out a dry laugh. Love? Just emotional volatility. And he invested in stability. Naomi entered the wedding hall holding Eli's hand. Her dress was worn, the stitching near the shoulders frayed, but she walked straight, avoiding no one's eyes. Eli chattered beside her. Naomi smiled, but her eyes didn't. That smile was for her child. There was none left for the past. An old song began to play. Naomi paused. Her heart brushed against a memory. They once sat on a dorm rooftop, foreheads touching, breath mingled. Jared read her poetry. She closed her eyes and listened. "I'll build you a world no one can touch," he had promised. That vow once meant everything. Now it was just a scar, no longer painful, but never erased. Naomi squeezed her son's hand. It's okay. She had learned to live without promises kept. Eli sat quietly by the banquet table, eyes wide, scanning the room. He wasn't shy, just more silent than most kids. A spoon in one hand, a deflated balloon in the other, playing alone, growing up alone. Jared glanced over and froze. So familiar. Eli had no idea he was being watched. He tilted his head, resting his chin in his palm, exactly like a photo of young Jared long ago. Jared turned away, but he couldn't escape the tightness in his throat. He'd once sat just like that, in a house with no man's voice. One look can awaken memories money can't buy back. Do you believe that sometimes a child doesn't need to say a word? Just one look is enough to bring the past rushing back? Jared stood frozen. Naomi's words ripped through the air. "He's your son." No one laughed. No one toasted. Just the sound of his heart, pounding as if the world had shifted. You should have told me." Naomi met his eyes. "You were never ready to be a father. I knew that better than anyone." Jared stepped back slightly. "You disappeared, without a word. I came to find you, but someone else spoke for you." She didn't name names. Jared already knew. Naomi's eyes no longer burned with anger, only exhaustion. The kind that only comes from hoping too much, for too long. What would you do? If you were Naomi, would you stay silent or fight to be heard? Naomi didn't hesitate when Jared asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" She tightened her grip on her bag and said slowly, "I came to find you, right after I found out I was pregnant." A memory surfaced. Naomi, standing outside a cold glass tower, rain soaking her coat, a fabric tote in hand. Inside it, the first ultrasound. She asked the receptionist. The woman looked her up and down, indifferent. "You don't have an appointment. Mr. Blake doesn't take personal visits." Naomi tried to explain. She was turned away, so she waited. 2 hours, in the gray rain. No one came. No one spoke. But one thing was clear. She wasn't allowed in that world. Jared looked at her, and for the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. Naomi continued, her voice steady but laced with old pain. "An hour later, your mother showed up. She wore a gray suit. Her perfume was elegant and cold as steel. She didn't sit, didn't ask, didn't apologize, just placed a signed check on the marble table, an amount big enough to silence anyone. You don't belong in our world. Let him live the life he deserves." Naomi said nothing. She looked at the woman, then at her belly, and tore the check in half. The pieces floated to the wet ground. No yelling, no begging, just silence. As she turned away, in that moment, she understood. She wasn't losing because she was poor. She simply wasn't allowed to exist in the life of the man she had once trusted. Jared clenched his fists, his breath heavy. "Why didn't you tell me? I had a right to know." Naomi lifted her eyes. Red, but calm. "I didn't need money. I just needed a word." She turned away, but the tears still fell. A word that meant something. A word that stood with me just once. Jared was silent. The ache spread across his chest. There was no defense for being absent 5 years. Naomi exhaled. "You chose your career. I chose our child." Just one sentence. But it cut straight through what Jared had tried so hard to hide. He thought he was sacrificing for the future. But in the end, that future had no space for the people who mattered most. Jared remained still, unable to form a response. The air between him and Naomi was thick, the weight of the past pressing down on them both. Then, a tiny hand touched his. Eli. The boy didn't understand what was happening. He simply looked up at Jared and smiled. "I like you. No reason, no conditions, just a pure, honest feeling." Jared looked down at the little fingers wrapped around his. A warmth hit him, deep and sudden. He nearly cried. Not from pain, but because he never imagined holding a child's hand would feel like grasping a forgotten part of his own soul. One small hand, enough to pull him back to a place spreadsheets and status had never reached. Naomi sat on a stone bench, watching Eli play just a few steps away. Her voice was soft, almost only for Jared. "After school, he always asks me, 'Do I have a dad?'" Jared looked up. Naomi continued. "One day, he saw another kid being picked up by his father. That night, he held his pillow and asked me, 'Mom, if I had a dad, would he read me stories before bed?'" Jared bowed his head. That exact question he'd once asked his own mother 30 years ago. Naomi's hands gripped tight. "He's not angry. He just dreams. About someone who never existed." Jared buried his face in his hands. He said nothing. Couldn't say anything. For the first time, he didn't just feel absent. He felt invisible in the very life he should have been part of all along. Jared looked up. His voice was soft but steady. "I want to take Eli for a walk, just nearby." Naomi looked at him, longer than necessary. Hesitation flickered in her eyes. She didn't answer right away. She glanced over at Eli, who was innocently playing with a fallen leaf. "You know he likes you," she said. "I can see that." Naomi stood slowly, her voice more deliberate. "But taking a few steps with him doesn't make you a father." Jared opened his mouth to respond, but she raised her hand. "He's used to people not staying." A breeze passed, carrying the weight of the silence between them. Naomi continued, eyes still on her son. "You can show up, but will you stay?" A question, and a warning. Because this time, if Jared walked away, he might not get another chance. They walked together down a narrow path of cobblestones. Eli held Jared's hand tightly, hurrying to match the adult's stride. Neither spoke, but the tension had lifted. Jared looked down at Eli, his soft curls, the playful way he moved. Every now and then, the boy glanced up and smiled. Jared sat on a stone step. Eli sat beside him. No pressure, no invitation needed. After a moment, Jared spoke quietly. "Do you like storybooks?" The words startled even him. It was the first time he'd called Eli son, even if only in his mind. No planning, no rehearsing. Eli turned to him, whispering like it was something sacred. "I can call you Dad, if you want." Jared didn't speak. He just nodded. And for the first time in years, he felt something warm rise inside him. Not because of success, but because of a single word, not yet spoken. Jared stepped into his penthouse apartment. He took off his suit jacket and tossed his phone onto the table. The screen lit up. 103 unread emails, 7 missed calls. He ignored them. Instead of opening his laptop like always, he reached for a small wooden box tucked under the liquor shelf. Inside were a few faded photographs. He picked one up. Naomi, hair tied up, smiling sideways as he secretly snapped a photo while she read. That smile hadn't been in his recent memory. Jared sat on the sofa staring at the photo. The notifications kept pinging. He reached for the phone, and powered it off, a CEO closing the door to the world, and quietly reopening one he had once abandoned. The next day, Jared stood behind a low, wooden fence just a few feet from the preschool yard. He hadn't called Naomi, he just wanted to see his son from afar. It was recess. Children laughed and ran across the playground. Eli sat alone in a corner, drawing in the dirt with a broken twig. No one teased him, but no one joined him either. Jared gripped the fence. It felt like watching an old scene replay. He'd been that kid once. No one picking him up on time, no one asking how his day went. Eli looked up, not sad, not smiling, just used to being alone. Jared swallowed hard. What he felt wasn't guilt. It was recognition. A life of quiet loneliness, being passed down unless someone finally broke the cycle. Jared stood at Naomi's door. No flowers, no gifts, just conviction in his eyes and something he needed to say. Naomi opened the door, surprised. "What are you doing here? I want to be a father. Maybe not today, but starting today." She didn't reply immediately. She looked at him for a long time. "Jared," she said, "being a father isn't like being a CEO." He swallowed back a retort. Naomi continued, her voice firm. "No half measures. Either you're his father, or you're the absent executive you've always been. You can't be both." Jared stood in silence. This wasn't just a question for him, but for anyone who's ever traded family for ambition. What about you? If it came down to it, would you choose your child or your company? In the office on the 52nd floor, Jared sat before a wall of meetings. A conference call with Tokyo at 6 p.m., just like every other non-negotiable. He opened his laptop, fingers flying, then paused. In the calendar block, he typed, "Story time with Eli, 6 p.m., and clicked Save. No explanation, no excuse, just one quiet decision, to shift an empire for something more important. His assistant called in, "Sir, Tokyo's not happy." Jared answered plainly, "My son needs me at 6. For the first time, he let something personal cut through the numbers. "No, I'm sorry. Just presents." Jared's mother walked into his office, face carved from marble. She dropped a magazine on the desk, its cover showing Jared holding a child's hand. "Is this true?" Jared didn't flinch. "His name is Eli. He's your grandson." Silence. Then her voice, sharp as glass. "You're throwing away your career over some youthful mistake?" Jared met her eyes. "The only mistake was not knowing my son existed." Her tone turned colder. "That girl is beneath you. You were raised to lead, not crawl back to some poor past. This wasn't just mother versus son. It was 2 generations, 2 value systems, 2 worlds, no longer walking the same road." Naomi opened an old envelope, paper yellowed with time. It was her handwriting. A letter to Jared, written 5 years ago. A letter he had never read. "I didn't know. Your mother kept it." Jared's voice was low, as if apologizing for years of silence. Naomi went still. She read each line, reliving the hurt she'd once poured onto the page. "I don't want your money. I just want to know if you still see me as a person." Tears fell, dotting the letter's edge. "I forgave you long ago, but I never forgot." Jared said nothing. There was no justification in that small room. Only one thing remained. The truth, finally seen for what it was. Naomi placed her teacup down and looked Jared straight in the eye. No more tears, no more anger. Just one final condition, clear and non-negotiable. Eli doesn't need private school. He doesn't need a 6-figure trust fund. He needs you. He needs to see you there. Jared lowered his head. For the first time, the man who'd led global empires fell silent, because one sentence hit harder than any market crash. Naomi continued, calm, not cruel. "Being a father doesn't require money. It requires time. Not birthdays, not Thanksgiving, but Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. The days when nothing special happens." The room fell still, but it was the kind of stillness that wakes you up, because some absences can never be made up for. Jared stood. No excuses, no defenses. "I used to choose wrong." The boardroom over the dinner table. Stocks over phone calls. Business cards over bedtime kisses. Naomi said nothing, but her hands gripped the edge of her sleeve as if holding on to her last bit of strength. Jared stepped closer. His voice broke. "But today, I choose differently. Not to redeem myself, but because for the first time I finally see what's worth keeping. No grand promises, just an honest look. The look of a man who had been lost, but was finding his way back. And in that moment, titles, deals, and awards faded. What remained was a father learning to choose right. Laughter echoed as the paper plane spun across the yard and landed right on Jared's head. The same man who once sealed billion-dollar deals, now squatting in the grass like a child. "You lost, Dad!" Eli shouted with glee. Jared clutched his head, pretending to surrender, laughing like deadlines didn't exist. Behind the window, Naomi watched in silence as if afraid to believe it was real. For the first time in years, she saw Jared not checking his watch, not answering calls, not looking away. He was just looking at Eli and smiling, genuinely. Naomi's lips curved, not in defense, just peace. For the first time she allowed herself to hope that her son might have a father, not a perfect one, but a present one. The same hand that once signed million-dollar deals now clumsily labeled a lunchbox. Eli. Lunch in blue marker. His first homemade lunch. Nothing fancy, nothing gourmet. Just an egg sandwich, a few apple slices, and a tiny note. "You're the best thing I've ever had." Eli took the box like it was a treasure. "Dad." His voice trembled, truly overwhelmed. "Today's the happiest day of my life." Jared swallowed hard. No one ever taught him how to be a father. No book ever explained how to make a child feel joy. But in that moment, Eli didn't need perfection. He just needed presence. Sometimes, happiness begins with nothing more than a small, sincere sandwich. Jared stood at the door, hands clenched. His pride was gone, replaced by the fragility of a man who knew he'd caused too much pain. "I'm sorry, Naomi. There aren't enough words. But I need to say them, even if they're late." Naomi was quiet. Her face held no anger, but it wasn't soft either. She looked at him like someone remembering something once beautiful and deeply broken. "I haven't forgiven everything. I haven't forgotten everything. But for Eli..." We start again. No hug, no tears, just a sentence, and a door that once closed, cracked open. Forgiveness doesn't always come whole, but sometimes it's enough to begin something good. She entered the room for the first time without instructions, only the tired eyes of a mother who once thought she was right. "I was wrong." Her voice was low, still holding the tone of someone used to power. "I wanted to protect the family name, but I sacrificed too much." Jared didn't blame her, didn't bow. He met her gaze, not as the son who once waited for approval, but as a man no longer lost. "I'm not a child waiting for you to draw my path. I'm choosing to be a father, not your puppet." Silence followed. Not to hurt, but to draw a new boundary. In that moment, Jared stood tall, not as a CEO, but as a father who knew exactly who he needed to protect. The tiny preschool stage buzzed with graduation music. Kids waved, giggled, searched for familiar faces. Eli stepped forward in a slightly oversized gown, hair combed to the side, face glowing. He scanned the crowd and saw Jared. Not in a suit, no laptop, just a smile, waiting only for him. When it was his turn to speak, Eli grinned proudly. "My name is Eli, and that's my dad." He pointed, like revealing a treasure. The class turned to look. Jared didn't flinch. He simply placed a hand over his chest, right where his heart had just made a loud, warm thump. For the first time, he wasn't proud of his title, not his assets, but of one word, spoken loud and clear in front of the world. Dad. The playground had emptied by late afternoon. Naomi stood beside Jared, sunset catching the strands of her hair. She said nothing at first, just watched Eli run wild with his friends. Then she turned, voice quiet. "You're not perfect, I know that, but our son needs you, and this time, so do I." Jared didn't respond right away. The breeze swept past. He knew not everything broken could be fixed, but he knew this much. I won't disappear again. No more standing outside, waiting to be invited. I'm here, to stay. Naomi didn't nod, didn't pull away. She simply took his hand. No label, but enough to hold on to. A door opened. Not an ending, just the start of a new chapter, waiting to be written. A single candle flickered atop a small, white frosted cake. The letters curved slightly. Happy 6th Eli. Eli closed his eyes, Both his small hands rested on Jared's. Naomi sat beside them, one hand gently on Eli's back. 1, 2, 3. They blew together. Laughter filled the room. No loud applause, no flashy balloons, just a moment, peaceful and whole. Jared pulled Eli close. The boy nestled into his chest and whispered, "I wish every day was my birthday." Naomi watched them, a soft curve on her lips, tears quietly falling. Not from sadness, but because, for the first time, her heart could finally rest. Sometimes, a mother's smallest dream is just to blow out a candle with no one missing. Jared sat on the sofa. Eli had fallen asleep in his arms. The screen reflected his face. No longer the cold, untouchable CEO, but a tired dad with dark circles and a worn smile. He turned toward a small video recorder, his monthly journal he promised to send to Eli, his voice low but clear. "If someone's listening, I just want to say this. Don't let your career cost you your family. Money can return, contracts can be replaced, but children, they grow up once." Eli stirred, mumbling something in a dream. Jared looked down, smiling for the first time, not because he won anything, but because he found something he thought he'd lost. A smile full of gratitude for making it back in time. Maybe we've all lost something before, not because we didn't care to diner, but because we thought we had more time. A hug delayed, an apology unsaid, a dinner missed for another meeting. Jared had been there, and if you have too, lost someone, missed a moment, let a family slip away, this isn't just Jared's story, it's ours, the story of those who went too far and tried to come home. If you've ever felt that way, comment, "Me too," not to complain, but to remind each other there's still time. The office lights were still on. Unread emails, pending deals, urgent contracts. They waited. Jared stepped in, looked at them all, then turned off the light. He walked back out, took Eli's tiny hand as the boy yawned. "Time for bed, little warrior." The house was quiet. No ringing phones. No late meetings. Just the sound of small footsteps fading toward bedtime. On the wall, a photo of the three of them, laughing. No filter, no perfect lighting. Because sometimes, the greatest empire is the love you don't let slip away. Success isn't what you build, it's who you become. If this story found a piece of you, like, share, and subscribe, because someone out there might still be looking for a reason to return to what truly matters. Family.